She had always loved music. Even as a child, she would hum tunes to herself, tap on tables and chairs, and try to imitate the sounds of songs she heard on the radio. In a small house that echoed with laughter and daily life, the piano sat in the corner, old and slightly worn, but full of possibilities. She didn't come from a family of musicians. No one had ever taught her formally, and there were no lessons waiting for her at a music school. Yet, she felt music in her bones, as if it were part of her heartbeat. At school, things were different. She was not the most popular, and she often felt invisible among groups of loud voices and confident kids. When she mentioned to her classmates that she could play the piano, the reactions were far from supportive. They laughed, making jokes at her expense. "You play piano?" someone would say, smirking. "We want to see this," others would whisper behind her back, saying that she was just pretending to be talented. She felt a knot in her stomach each time, but she didn't stop herself from dreaming. Her love for music was private and precious. At home, she would spend hours practicing, listening carefully to every note, and imagining herself performing on a big stage. Her fingers would move slowly at first, touching the keys gently, trying to make them sing. Sometimes, the piano would produce rough, uneven sounds, but she didn't mind. She would play the same piece over and over until it sounded right in her own ears, letting herself get lost in the music. It was her escape, her safe place, a world where no one could judge her. One day, the school announced a big piano audition. It was for a chance to perform at a city-wide event, a competition that drew attention from many important people. The thought of participating made her heart race. It was exciting and terrifying at the same time. She knew this was her chance to show what she could really do. But when she mentioned it to her classmates, the laughter returned, louder and sharper. They teased her relentlessly, calling her overconfident and foolish. Some even said she should just stay home and save everyone the embarrassment. The ridicule was hard to ignore. Every laugh, every sneer, felt like a weight pressing on her shoulders. She felt her confidence shake, wondering if maybe they were right. Could she really do it? Did she have what it took to perform in front of strangers, in front of judges who knew exactly what they were listening for? Despite the fear and the teasing, she felt something stronger, a quiet determination that refused to disappear. She told herself she would not let their words define her. Music was her passion, her voice, her way of expressing herself, and she wasn't going to give it up because of their doubts. At home, she practiced more diligently than ever. She found old sheet music in the corner of the house and taught herself piece by piece. She would start slow, learning each note, making sure her fingers were in the right place, her timing perfect. Sometimes she would make mistakes, hitting wrong keys or forgetting parts of the melody, and she would sigh and start over. But she never gave up. Each time she played, she felt a little stronger, a little more capable. Slowly, her confidence grew, not because others had applauded her, but because she believed in herself and her ability to improve. She also started to watch videos of piano performances, trying to learn from the best. She noticed the way their hands moved, the emotion in their playing, the way they seemed to tell a story with music. She tried to imitate them, learning not just the notes, but the feeling behind them. She realized that playing the piano wasn't just about hitting the keys correctly. It was about expressing herself, sharing a piece of her soul with anyone who listened. Despite the ridicule at school, she found small pockets of encouragement. Her younger sibling would sometimes sit beside her and listen in awe, clapping softly when she finished a piece. An elderly neighbor would occasionally peek through the window and nod appreciatively. These tiny moments of recognition meant more to her than the mocking laughter of her classmates. They reminded her that there were people who could see her potential, who believed in her even when others didn't. The closer the audition date came, the more anxious she became. At night, she would lie awake, thinking about the judges, the other contestants, and the possibility of failing. Her mind would race with doubts, but she would take deep breaths and remind herself of all the practice, all the hours she had spent learning, all the passion she carried inside. She repeated to herself, "I can do this. I will do this. Not for them, not for anyone else, but for me." Finally, the day of the audition arrived. She dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made her feel confident but comfortable. Her heart pounded as she walked into the building, the smell of polished floors and piano polish filling her senses. Contestants were warming up, their fingers flying over keys, creating beautiful sounds that made her both nervous and inspired. The whispers and stares returned, reminding her of the teasing she had endured, but she held her head high, refusing to let them shake her. She sat down at the piano, the cool keys under her fingers, and closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered all the nights of practice, all the times she had played when no one was watching, all the music she had carried in her heart. She took a deep breath, lifted her hands, and prepared to play, ready to let the music speak for her, louder than any doubt or ridicule ever could. After the mockery at school, she knew she had to focus even more on herself and her music. She realized that nobody would believe in her if she didn't believe in herself first. So she spent hours alone with the piano at home, letting the world fade away. The small, quiet room became her sanctuary. The hum of the heater, the ticking of the clock, even the faint sounds of street traffic outside, all of it faded into the background. As she immersed herself in her music, she started to pay attention not just to the notes, but to the feeling behind them. Each melody became a story, each rhythm a heartbeat. She experimented with different tempos and dynamics, trying to find ways to make the music move and breathe. Sometimes she would start a piece one way and end up playing it completely differently, feeling that the music itself guided her hands. Her fingers learned to move more freely, and her confidence grew with each successful rendition. Even though she was practicing alone, she didn't feel lonely. The piano became her companion, the music her friend. She would close her eyes and imagine a crowd in front of her, their eyes fixed on the piano. She imagined the judges, the other contestants, and the people who had doubted her, not to intimidate them, but to prove to herself that she could overcome any fear. Music had given her a voice where words had failed. She also started keeping a small notebook, jotting down melodies that came to her in the middle of the day, or during the quiet moments of the night. Sometimes they were simple tunes, sometimes complicated fragments, but they were all hers. She practiced turning those fragments into complete pieces, teaching herself to think creatively and independently. These small exercises helped her develop not just skill, but also a deeper understanding of the music she loved. Her family noticed the change in her. They saw her sitting at the piano for hours, sometimes smiling, sometimes biting her lip in concentration. They could sense the determination in her eyes. Her younger sibling would often peek into the room, watching in awe as she played. Occasionally, her sibling would clap softly or hum along, giving her the quiet encouragement she needed. Even though there were no formal lessons, the love and support at home became a subtle but steady source of strength for her. Outside the home, life remained challenging. At school, the whispers and snickers didn't stop. Some classmates continued to doubt her abilities, spreading rumors that she would fail at the audition. But she had learned to ignore it. Each time she felt the sting of their words, she reminded herself of the hours she had spent practicing in solitude, the melodies she had nurtured in secret, and the determination that had carried her this far. Slowly, she began to feel a quiet power, the kind that comes from knowing that nobody can take your effort or passion away from you. To prepare further, she began to study the performances of well-known pianists. She watched videos, paying attention to the way they controlled their fingers, their hands, their posture. She noticed how much emotion they could convey in a single note, and how the pauses in the music could be as powerful as the notes themselves. She tried to replicate their style, not to copy them, but to learn the techniques and build her own understanding of musical expression. The piano no longer felt like a set of keys, it became an extension of her feelings, a way to communicate with the world without words. Some nights, she would feel overwhelmed. The pressure of the upcoming audition, combined with the memories of ridicule, would make her doubt herself. She would sit in the dark, staring at the piano, unsure if she was ready. But each time, she reminded herself that music was not about proving others wrong, it was about proving to herself that she could achieve something beautiful. She would take a deep breath, lift her hands, and start playing again. Slowly, the notes would come, steady and sure, and she would feel the fear and doubt melt away, replaced by a growing sense of confidence. She also learned to perform in small ways for people she trusted. Sometimes she would play a short piece for her family or her neighbor. Each small performance helped her feel more comfortable with the idea of playing in front of others. She learned to pay attention not just to the music, but to the connection she felt with the listeners. She realized that music was not just about impressing others, but about sharing a piece of herself, and that this connection was far more important than any judgment. As the audition drew closer, she started to imagine the stage. She pictured herself walking confidently to the piano, sitting down, and letting her fingers glide over the keys. She imagined the audience leaning forward, the judges watching intently, and the music filling the room with emotion. She imagined herself finishing the piece and feeling the quiet satisfaction of having given her best, regardless of what anyone else thought. This visualization became part of her preparation, helping her to stay focused and calm. She also began to explore the idea of improvisation. She would take a simple melody she knew and try to play it differently each time, experimenting with rhythms, harmonies, and dynamics. Sometimes it sounded beautiful, sometimes it was awkward, but every attempt taught her something new. She learned to trust her instincts, to follow the music as it led her, and to be brave enough to take risks. This freedom in her playing gave her a sense of excitement, and she realized that music was not just about rules, it was about expression, creativity, and courage. In the weeks leading up to the audition, she practiced consistently, balancing school, family responsibilities, and her own personal time. It was not easy, but she never let the challenges stop her. She had grown stronger, not just in skill, but in character. She learned patience, perseverance, and the value of dedication. More importantly, she learned to trust herself, to believe that her efforts could produce something remarkable, even if nobody else believed it. Through all of this, she never lost sight of why she loved music. It was not about fame, or winning, or proving anyone wrong. It was about joy, passion, and the magic that came from creating something beautiful with her own hands. She had discovered that music could carry her through fear, sadness, and doubt, and that it could give her a voice even when words failed. The piano had become more than an instrument, it was a part of who she was, and she knew that as long as she stayed true to herself, the music would always guide her. By the time the audition day was near, she felt a quiet sense of readiness, not the loud, confident readiness that others might display, but a calm, steady confidence born from months of dedication, practice, and self-discovery. She had faced ridicule, doubt, and fear, and she had overcome them through sheer determination and love for what she did. No matter what happened at the audition, she knew she had already achieved something important. She had proven to herself that she could pursue her passion, no matter the obstacles. The day of the audition had finally arrived, and the air was thick with nervous energy. The building was large, with polished floors that reflected the bright lights overhead. Contestants moved through the hall, warming up on pianos of various sizes, their fingers flying across the keys with skill and confidence. She walked in quietly, her heart pounding, feeling both excitement and fear. Whispers followed her, and some people glanced at her with skepticism. She could almost hear the unspoken words, "She doesn't belong here." But she kept her head high, telling herself that this was her moment. No matter what anyone thought, she waited in line, observing the other contestants. Each one seemed practiced and polished, exuding confidence. She felt a twinge of doubt, wondering if she had prepared enough, if her music would be good enough. But she quickly pushed the thought aside. All the months of practice, all the hours spent perfecting each note, had led to this moment. She reminded herself that her music was not just about skill, it was about feeling, expression, and the story she wanted to tell through the piano. When her name was called, she walked to the piano, feeling the weight of the audience's gaze. The judges sat behind a long table, their faces unreadable. She sat down, her fingers hovering above the keys, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. The room seemed to hold its breath with her, silent in anticipation. She closed her eyes for a moment, remembering the nights she had spent practicing alone, the melodies she had written in her notebook, and the joy she had found in every note. She told herself, "This is for me, not for anyone else." As her fingers touched the keys, the first notes filled the room. They were gentle at first, cautious, but full of emotion. The music seemed to flow naturally, as if it had always existed within her, waiting for this moment to be shared. She allowed herself to feel the music fully, letting it guide her hands. Every note was deliberate, every pause meaningful. She played not to impress the judges, but to express herself, to tell her story without words. The judges exchanged glances, their eyebrows rising slightly as they listened. Some of the other contestants had been meticulous and technically perfect, but there was something different about her playing. It wasn't just accuracy, it was passion, sincerity, and this subtle creativity that made the music feel alive. She allowed herself to experiment slightly, adding small flourishes and variations that brought the piece to life. Her hands moved with confidence and freedom, as if the piano had become an extension of her soul. The audience, too, felt the change in the room. Some leaned forward, drawn into the performance, sensing the emotion and skill in every note. Even those who had doubted her presence there could not help but pause and listen. The music seemed to speak directly to them, telling a story of dedication, perseverance, and hidden talent. Her confidence grew with each passing measure, and she felt a sense of joy she had never experienced before. The fear and tension melted away, replaced by a deep connection to the music and the audience. As she continued, the piece grew in complexity, yet her control never wavered. She moved from gentle, flowing melodies to more powerful, dramatic passages, showcasing both her technical ability and emotional depth. Each note was placed with intention, each pause a deliberate breath in the story she was telling. Her fingers danced across the keys, confident and precise, yet expressive and full of life. She felt a rush of excitement, knowing that her music had the power to move people, to capture their attention and hearts. Some contestants had performed before her, but none had the same magnetic presence she now commanded. Her performance seemed to fill the entire hall, drawing even the distracted listeners into the moment. People who had been skeptical moments before now watched with awe, silently acknowledging that they were witnessing something special. The judges leaned forward, their expressions shifting from neutrality to curiosity and admiration. She could sense that she had captured their attention, that her music had finally spoken the words she could not dot. As she reached the climax of the piece, she allowed herself to fully embrace the music. The notes soared, powerful yet controlled, conveying every emotion she had felt throughout her journey: fear, doubt, determination, joy, and triumph. She felt her heart beating in time with the rhythm, every note a reflection of her soul. The audience was silent, held captive by the sheer sincerity and beauty of her playing. She knew she had given everything she had, and it felt incredible. The final note lingered in the air, a soft echo that seemed to hold the room in suspended silence. For a brief moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, slowly, the audience erupted in applause, clapping and cheering, some even standing to honor her performance. The judges smiled, nodding and whispering among themselves, clearly impressed by the depth and skill she had displayed. She sat back for a moment, catching her breath, feeling a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. She had faced her fears, defied expectations, and let her music shine. As she walked off the stage, people approached her to congratulate her. Some classmates who had mocked her before now looked at her with awe and perhaps a hint of regret. She smiled politely, knowing that their opinions no longer mattered. What mattered was the experience she had had, the courage she had found, and the connection she had created through her music. She realized that this moment was just the beginning, a doorway to new possibilities, recognition, and growth. She returned home that evening, exhausted but exhilarated. She replayed the experience in her mind, remembering every note, every reaction, and every emotion she had felt. She knew that she had discovered something powerful within herself: not just skill, but confidence, resilience, and the ability to express herself fully. The piano had given her a voice, and through her dedication, courage, and love for music, she had allowed that voice to be heard. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From practicing alone in a small room, enduring ridicule, doubting herself, and persevering through fear, she had reached a moment where her passion and determination had been recognized. She realized that the path to achieving something meaningful was never easy, but the rewards, personal growth, the joy of expression, and the ability to inspire others were worth every challenge. She fell asleep with a sense of peace and excitement, knowing that her journey with music was far from over, and that each note she played in the future would carry the courage and love she had discovered on that stage. After her performance, a quiet sense of disbelief lingered in the room. The judges, who had once looked stern and reserved, now leaned forward, their faces showing admiration. She could feel their eyes on her, analyzing each motion, each note she had played. The audience, too, remained silent for a moment, as if trying to absorb what had just unfolded. Then, slowly, the room erupted into applause. The sound was overwhelming, a wave of recognition that washed over her. It was a mixture of respect, astonishment, and appreciation. For a moment, she simply sat there, stunned, her hands still hovering above the keys, trying to let the moment sink in. As the clapping continued, she remembered all the nights she had spent alone at home, practicing in secret, every note she had struggled with, every melody she had rewritten in her notebook. Every moment of doubt, all of it had led to this instant. The ridicule from her classmates, the whispers and sneers, all seemed distant now, like shadows that had been chased away by the light of her music. She realized that the very obstacles that had once terrified her had helped her grow stronger, more resilient, and more determined. The judges called her over after the performance, smiling and nodding as she approached, They praised her skill, her emotion, and her unique interpretation of the piece. One of them remarked on the depth of feeling she conveyed, something that could not be taught in lessons but came naturally from her heart. Another noted her technical skill, saying that her fingers moved with confidence and precision, creating music that was both powerful and graceful. She listened carefully, her chest swelling with pride, grateful that her efforts had finally been acknowledged. Even some of the students who had laughed at her before were approaching now, their expressions a mix of awe and surprise. Some tried to apologize, others simply offered quiet compliments, unsure of how to express themselves. She smiled at them, polite and composed, but inside, she felt a quiet sense of vindication, not in a way that sought revenge, but in knowing that she had proven to herself and everyone else that her dedication and love for music were real. Their words no longer held power over her, because she knew her own strength and talent. As the day continued, she was invited to perform at a small celebration event hosted by the school, showcasing the best participants. She accepted, feeling a mixture of excitement and nerves. Each time she sat at the piano, whether in practice or in front of an audience, she reminded herself of the joy that music brought her, the feeling of connection it created, and the freedom it allowed. She had learned that music was more than just playing notes correctly. It was about telling a story, sharing a part of oneself, and inspiring those who listened. Over the next few weeks, she continued to practice diligently. Each day brought new challenges, new pieces to learn, and new ways to express herself. She experimented with tempo, dynamics, and phrasing, discovering that the music could change completely depending on how she played it. She felt a growing sense of creativity and confidence, understanding that the piano was not just an instrument, but a medium through which she could communicate her thoughts and emotions. Every note she played became a message, every melody a reflection of her journey. Her family watched her progress with pride and amazement. They noticed the way she carried herself with quiet confidence, the way she approached each piece with focus and care, and the way her passion for music seemed to light up her entire being. Her younger sibling often sat beside her, quietly listening, sometimes clapping at the end of a particularly beautiful passage. Their support, though silent at times, was invaluable. It reminded her that her journey was not just her own, but shared with those who cared about her and believed in her potential. Outside of her home and school, the recognition of her talent began to grow. People who had once doubted her started to take notice, reaching out with encouragement and invitations to perform. She received letters of appreciation, small awards, and even opportunities to collaborate with other musicians. Each acknowledgement reinforced the truth she had always known, that her love for music, her dedication, and her willingness to persevere in the face of doubt were real and powerful. It was a reminder that genuine effort and passion could overcome skepticism and adversity. She also began to mentor a few younger students who were interested in learning the piano. She shared her experiences, emphasizing the importance of patience, practice, and believing in oneself. She encouraged them to explore their own creativity, to experiment with melodies and rhythms, and to find joy in the process rather than focusing solely on outcomes. Teaching others became another source of fulfillment for her, a way to give back and to inspire the next generation of musicians who might otherwise feel uncertain or discouraged. Each performance, each practice session, became a part of her ongoing journey. She learned that success was not a single moment, but a series of small victories, each one building on the last. The applause and recognition were rewarding, but the true satisfaction came from the growth she experienced, the emotions she conveyed, and the connections she made through her music. She realized that the piano had given her more than skill. It had given her courage, confidence, and a sense of purpose that could not be shaken by doubt or ridicule. In quiet moments, she reflected on the path that had led her here. She remembered the early days, when she had been laughed at and told she could not play. She thought about the nights spent practicing in solitude, the melodies written in her notebook, and the hours of experimentation and learning. Each memory reminded her that her journey had been worth every struggle, every challenge, and every moment of uncertainty. The piano had become not just an instrument, but a symbol of her resilience and determination. The story of her audition began to spread among the students and teachers, serving as an example of perseverance and talent. People admired her not only for her skill, but also for her courage in facing ridicule and doubt. She became a quiet inspiration, showing that it was possible to achieve something meaningful through dedication, passion, and belief in oneself. Her experience reinforced the idea that true talent often shines brightest when it comes from a place of sincerity and love. Through all of this, she never lost sight of the joy that music brought her. She continued to play for herself as much as for others, finding solace, excitement, and fulfillment in every note. She explored new pieces, experimented with different styles, and allowed herself to improvise and create. Music remained her companion, her expression, and her sanctuary. Every time she sat at the piano, she felt a sense of connection to herself, to the audience, and to the journey that had shaped her. By the end of this chapter in her life, she had transformed not only as a pianist, but as a person. She had discovered the power of perseverance, the value of self-belief, and the beauty of sharing one's passion with the world. Her audition had been more than a test of skill. It had been a turning point, a moment that revealed the strength, creativity, and courage she carried within herself. She knew that the future held many challenges and opportunities, but she also knew that with music in her heart and determination in her spirit, she could face anything and continue to inspire others along the way. The days after the audition were filled with excitement, nervous anticipation, and a sense of possibility that she had never experienced before. The applause, the compliments from the judges, and the encouragement from those who had once doubted her all felt like a dream she had worked for in secret. She woke up each morning thinking about the next opportunity to play, to explore, and to share her music with others. The piano had become not just a hobby or passion, but a purpose, something that defined who she was and what she wanted to do in life. She received word that she had been selected for a prestigious music event. It was an honor she could hardly believe, and it opened doors she had only dreamed of before. Invitations to workshops, small performances, and collaborations started coming in. She felt both excited and humbled, knowing that her dedication had led to this recognition. Yet, even with all the opportunities, she remained grounded. She remembered the long nights of practice, the times she had felt invisible and discouraged, and the moments when the only audience was herself. Those memories kept her focused and motivated, reminding her that success was built on effort and persistence, not just luck. Each day she continued to practice, exploring new pieces and refining old ones. She experimented with different styles and genres, discovering new ways to express herself through the piano. Sometimes she improvised, allowing her emotions to guide her hands across the keys. Each improvisation taught her something about herself, her feelings, her thoughts, and the story she wanted to tell with music. She began to realize that every note, every pause, and every variation carried meaning. The piano was not just an instrument. It was a way to communicate with the world, a bridge between her inner self and the audience. Her family watched her transformation with pride. They had always known she was talented, but now the world was beginning to recognize it too. They encouraged her, celebrated her achievements, and supported her in ways both big and small. Her younger sibling continued to be her quiet cheerleader, offering smiles, claps, and words of encouragement after each practice session. The support of her family was a constant reminder that she was never truly alone, and that the love of those close to her could give her strength even in moments of doubt. As she prepared for the upcoming events, she began to reflect on her journey. She remembered the ridicule, the whispers, and the doubts that had once surrounded her. She realized that those challenges had shaped her, forcing her to develop patience, resilience, and focus. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It was the dedication to improve, the willingness to face fears, and the courage to continue despite criticism that truly defined her journey. The obstacles she had faced had become part of her story, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for them. With each performance, she noticed the effect her music had on people. Some would close their eyes, letting the melody carry them to another place. Others would nod their heads in appreciation, quietly moved by the emotion in her playing. She began to understand the power of music, not just to entertain, but to touch hearts, to inspire, and to create connections between people. Each performance became more than just an opportunity to showcase skill. It became a way to communicate, to share a piece of herself, and to make a lasting impact. One day, after a small recital, a teacher approached her with a smile and said, "You have something special, not just technique, but a heart. Never lose that." Those words resonated deeply. She realized that it was not enough to play the right notes. She had to play with honesty, passion, and authenticity. That realization became her guiding principle in every practice, every performance, and every composition she created. The piano was no longer just a tool. It was a partner, a means of expressing the depths of her soul. She also began to mentor younger students, sharing her experiences and encouraging them to follow their own musical passions. She taught them not only how to play the piano, but also how to believe in themselves, how to persevere, and how to find joy in the process. Watching her students grow and develop their own confidence brought her a sense of fulfillment that was different from performing. It reminded her that the impact of music went beyond personal achievement. It could inspire, empower, and nurture others. In quiet moments, she would sit at the piano alone, playing for herself. These sessions were private and personal, a time to reflect, to explore, and to connect with her emotions. She discovered new melodies, experimented with harmonies, and allowed herself to take risks. Each note carried intention, each melody a reflection of her inner thoughts. These moments reinforced the importance of staying true to herself, of playing for the love of music and not merely for recognition or applause. She understood that authenticity was the key to creating music that resonated with others. As she looked back on her journey, she realized how far she had come, from a young girl ridiculed for claiming she could play, to a confident pianist performing in front of audiences who listened with awe. She had grown in skill, courage, and self-belief. She had learned that success was not measured solely by accolades, but by the growth, perseverance, and joy found along the way. Each challenge had become a stepping stone, each moment of doubt an opportunity to strengthen her resolve. The experience had also taught her humility and gratitude. She never took a single opportunity for granted, understanding the value of hard work, support, and perseverance. She celebrated each small success, knowing that they were part of a larger journey. She also remained mindful of the responsibility she had as a musician, to inspire, to connect, and to share her passion with the world. Her music had the power to move people, and she felt privileged to be able to use her gift in meaningful ways. Over time, her story became known beyond her immediate circle. People admired her not just for her skill, but for the courage she had shown, the obstacles she had overcome, and the passion she had pursued in the face of doubt. She became a symbol of perseverance, a reminder that dedication and belief in oneself could overcome ridicule and skepticism. Her journey inspired others to follow their own passions, to work hard, and to trust in their abilities even when the world seemed uncertain. Looking forward, she felt a sense of optimism and determination. She knew that challenges would continue, that there would always be new skills to learn, new pieces to master, and new opportunities to embrace. But she also knew that she had the strength, focus, and passion to face them. The piano would remain her companion, her voice, and her means of expression. She felt ready to continue her journey, confident in her abilities and in the power of her music. In the end, she realized that her journey was about more than a single audition or performance. It was about discovering herself, embracing her passion, and sharing it with the world. It was about turning ridicule and doubt into motivation, transforming fear into courage, and finding joy in the process of creating something beautiful. She understood that the true reward was not applause or recognition, but the growth, fulfillment, and connection that came from following her heart and letting her music speak. She smiled as she sat at the piano one evening, fingers poised over the keys. The room was quiet, filled only with the gentle hum of life outside the window. She began to play, letting the music flow naturally, freely, and from the heart. Each note resonated with all that she had learned, experienced, and become. In that moment, she knew that her journey had only just begun, and that with music in her heart and determination in her soul, she could continue to inspire, create, and shine for the rest of her life.